Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. The Democratic National Convention, or should I say the best Broadway show in Chicago, is over. But all the buzz of the media is now on who's up, who's down, will Kamala get a bump? I'm not going to bother with those things now because I think something really, really important that you are not going to hear on the mainstream media actually happened at the Democratic National Convention, and I'm shocked where it came from. You know that I love criticizing corporate media, but when there is credit to give, I will give it. And Chris Cuomo, former CNN anchor, kind of, your typical establishment media guy, now on News Nation, which is a lower level mainstream outlet. He's kind of, born into a rich political dynasty, kind of privileged, but he said something that you will never see in mainstream CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the New York Times. He kind of exposed that all of it, the DNC, the RNC, all political campaigns in general, all the fundraising emails and super PAC ads and all the West Wing TV show grandiose thinking about a better politics, it's all bullshit. Buckle up, because I had to pinch myself. And again, credit to Chris Cuomo. This was one of the, honestly, the most refreshing and honest things I have ever seen. And I'm almost 38, ever on cable news or in media in general. Let's take a look.
A big theme here at the DNC is that they're going to go after corporate gouging, and they're going to go after corporations, whether it's in taxes, largesse, loopholes. The RNC, we heard the same thing. They're going after the elites, the two sets of rules. Let me reveal a reality to you that has to be spoken to here, okay? These are the soldiers. These are the men and the women that go back to their constituencies and their communities, and they fight. They take time from their jobs. They take time from their families. Republicans and Democrats alike, that's what they do. They need to charge these people up. They need to be able to get them on board. But there's another reality that is literally looking down on them. Greg, look at the ring of sweets, okay? This is not unique to Democrats. There is a game of money. When people talk about uniparty, we are strangled by the money reality in our politics. Those suites start at 500 grand. You think there's like a teacher group up in there? You think it's like the Cub Scouts of Columbia County, South Carolina, that's up in those boxes? Some of them are lobbies and good things. The media boxes, you think they're free? Why do you think I'm on the floor? News Nation is not a broke company. Nexstar is a massive organization. We are corporate media. We don't have one of those boxes because that's the game. You pay to play. Those boxes are filled with the same people that they say they're going to regulate. They are literally looking down on the faithful and being told, yeah, we're going to break down on them. We're going to make them pay their share. They paid $500, $700, $1 million, $1.5 million to have those seats. They get hotel suites that are probably gifted to the party. And the same thing is true with the Republican side. And they're going to take them down. They're going to change how it is. They are looking down from on high at the people who make the difference in their communities. And that is the reality of politics. And I had my producer walk around and show you those suites. Now, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. But the reality is, in 2000, they spent $300 million on presidential campaigns. 24 years later, you know what they're expected to spend? $10 billion. Do you know how much money Harris has raised in the last couple of weeks? Hundreds of millions. And that's success. A lot of it's small donor, a lot of it isn't. The most dangerous money in politics is now legal money because of Citizens United. You've got to know this. The idea that they can fight against it is almost laughable. It's almost laughable. So look and listen when you are told these things.
You got to know this. First off, I will give him credit. He said this on television news. I will give him credit. I'm going to criticize him too, but first let's give him credit because this was it. This is what I've been screaming for the entire time I've had a microphone, going on 10 years, that this is all bullshit. There's no red team, blue team. The only team is green. Yeah, there's differences between the two teams. The Democrats are better on certain things. I will give you that. But at the end of the day, for your wallet, for your children, for your future, there is no representative government. We live in the United Corporations of America, and the corporations, as he said, are at the top of the DNC. They're looking down on the people who are basically hoodwinked into thinking their vote actually matters to change things structurally, to stop the massive bank robbery that is our economic system. I've shown you the chart a million times. You don't see this chart at the DNC. You don't see this chart at the conventions. You don't hear about this on cable news. That's our economy. That's the political system. There's hundreds of millions of dollars put into making it seem like a West Wing fantasy. There's hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars on cable news to distract you away from this, to make you think this is about, virtuous Democrats against extremist Republicans, and Democrats or Kamala Harris are for the people. No, they're not. They're part of a corrupt system where, as Chris Cuomo pointed out, you got to pay $500,000 to $1 million, sometimes more, to get a box overlooking the DNC. Do you think that they are paying for those boxes and suites and rows of hotel floors, and they're getting nothing in return? Do you think the lobbyists and the corporations and the foundations and the media that not only are paying at the DNC, but are paying 24/7, super PACs, fundraisers in Napa and San Francisco and Martha's Vineyard and Washington, D.C. and Silicon Valley, fundraisers that they're hosting politicians, and they are literally purchasing the politicians? Do you think they're paying just because they're so interested in democracy and defeating fascism? No, they're paying for deregulation. They're paying for favors. They're paying for a favorable tax code. They are paying for whatever policy will help their business or their families, whether it be pharma, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, real estate. That's our government. Or as Chris Cuomo honestly said, we are strangled by the money interests. You pay to play. Those boxes are literally filled with the people they say they're going to regulate. The best way to describe it, and in my interview with Cornel West the other day, he mentioned somebody who said this to him. When I was a kid, I don't know about any of you watching, but when I was a kid, I loved the WWF. It's now the WWE, but I loved wrestling. And when I was young, I don't know, 8 years old to maybe 13, 14, I thought it was real. I really did. My mom, my dad, they took me to Nassau Coliseum. I grew up on Long Island. I went to Monday Night Raw. I'm kind of embarrassed to say, but this is what I loved growing up. I loved the drama, and I loved the theme music of the wrestlers coming at it. I loved the good guy versus the bad guy. And then, it turned, and sometimes you like the bad guy that even though he was kind of a bad guy, he was the anti-hero. And you loved the tension and not knowing who would win and the fireworks and the spectacle of it all. And then I realized it was fake. Sorry to tell any kids watching, it's fake. I still, when I'm bored, will watch an old school WrestleMania, but it's all fake. But it's how it makes you feel is what seems real. And that's the same thing about politics. When Kamala Harris is on stage and the DNC is panning the camera to an older black woman crying because they almost like they see themselves on stage, it's how it makes you feel. It's not about really the policy, because she wasn't actually talking about any policy, because she's not proposing any real policy that's going to dramatically change anything on healthcare. It's going to dramatically change anything on climate. It's going to dramatically change anything on housing. She's proposing things that are all incremental crumbs around the edges. And Republicans are actually proposing things that are not incremental or bold and structural and heinous and horrible. But it's how it makes you feel when you see Kamala Harris on stage, and you see, I'm not a black person, but if you are that older black woman that the TV was showing crying, you see yourself on stage, and you see progress, and you see evolution. This might be the first woman president, the first black woman president. It's how you feel when you see, Tim Walz on stage, the coach, the football coach, and just a regular Midwest guy. Doesn't matter that he screwed Native Americans in Minnesota and helped a pipeline company ram through Line 3 pipeline. Doesn't matter. He did do some good things like the free lunch program, but overall, it's not for Medicare for all or anything structurally changing. I mean, we could go down the list. Obama, it's how it makes you feel when he talks. What you think he could represent. Doesn't matter that, during the worst financial depression and crisis in 100 years, that he let millions and millions of people lose their homes and didn't actually go after the criminal bankers that caused it. None of that matters because it's a big production. It's a big theater. It's how it makes you feel. It's the vibes. It's the hope and change, or Kamala for the people, or Trump, make America great again. And that's what Cuomo was getting at. You got to ask, why did he never say this on CNN? This isn't something that, I don't know how old he is. I'm assuming in his 50s. It's not something that he just realized today working at News Nation. I mean, he was the son of New York City Governor Mario Cuomo, who could have become president and was about to run when he decided not to, I believe in the late 80s or early 90s. I mean, Chris Cuomo has known how politics works for a long time. Chris Cuomo is connected to all the money and interest he's talking about here. So why did he never talk this way on CNN? Why did he never talk this way when he was on ABC? He was a reporter for ABC. I'm happy he did now, but you got to wonder, where was all this truth bombs when it mattered, when you had bigger audiences? Well, perhaps the same corrupt system Chris Cuomo is accurately talking about here, he was part of it in the larger mainstream media. He's at News Nation now, which is still mainstream media, but maybe it allows him to talk a little bit more honestly. And maybe it's bigger than Chris Cuomo. You think Chris Cuomo is the only one who knows this? Do you think CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, CBS, NBC, ABC reporters that cover campaigns, that cover politics 24/7, that they're not aware that the moneyed interests run all of this? Do you think they're not aware when they're covering politics as a horse race and they're covering it like it's almost a sporting event, that very little of this matters? And I know some of you will say, Jordan, that's not true. It does matter. Democrats, the difference between Democrats and Republicans is women being able to choose make their own choices about their bodies, or some action towards the climate inferno. Yes, I'm not saying there is no difference. I'm not saying, I'm not being a nihilist and saying screw all of them. There is no difference between who you vote for, and it's up to you who you vote for. But you're talking about specific issues related to health and reproductive choices for women, or the climate, or whatever. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this. Capitalism, the economy, economic justice, your past, present, and future. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about specific issues that do matter, but is not the only reason you vote or volunteer or donate or elect presidents or congresspeople or senators. We shouldn't be voting just based on one issue, but that's unfortunately how it's become, and that's how they want it, because they want you to vote for the lesser of two evils and based on the lesser of two evils. And they want you to have low expectations as Americans and voters. That's what they want. So bravo to Chris Cuomo, but I ask, where was this all along? And where is the rest of the journalists with the truth that these elections are all theater, that these conventions are all theater, that the debates are all theater, that voting day is all theater? Because once it's over, it's those people sitting atop the boxes that purchased it for $1 million that are running our policy and our Congress and our Senate and our Supreme Court and our White House.